Inravio.com. Inravio.com.
Hello everybody, this is Joe Larson and you're watching the 5 Off 5 On Racing Show. I hope everybody had a nice Thanksgiving, everybody had a safe Thanksgiving, plenty of food, plenty of leftovers, and it was all good. I know we go to a friend's house for Thanksgiving and that's all well and good, but like I said to somebody today in the store, I was shopping, I said, when you go to somebody else's place for Thanksgiving, there's no leftovers. But anyway, tonight's show, we have a lot to do. We're going to talk about where are they now again? Tonight's people will be Tim Flock from the NASCAR Grand National Series in the early days of that, and Mike Stefanik, 9-time NASCAR Touring Series champion. We're also going to talk about the Turkey Derby and what went on down at the Jersey Shore, and some NASCAR news, some of the stuff that's going on. We have a little segment that we're going to talk about that Jeff Brodine has brought to light about concussions in our sport, similar to the NFL. And we'll also have some Formula One results, as well as some discussion on what's going on in NASCAR. So here we are. Where are they today, racing the early years? Tim Flock. Tim Flock, I'll tell you. We got some footage here. Tim Flock started as a NASCAR driver in NASCAR's first strictly stock event in 1949, finishing 5th at the season's end in points. 8th in points and 5th in his first event. Tim missed 1950 due to injuries sustained in a wreck at Charlotte, and then he returned in 51 to win 7 races and then 8 races in 52. Flock won the title even after flipping in the final event at West Palm Beach. The joke at the time was Tim Flock was the only driver to win a championship while upside down on his roof. In 1955, there was a record year for Flock. He had 19 poles and 18 victories out of 45 starts, a record for a single season which Richard Petty broke in 1967 with 27 victories. His final race from retiring, Tim Flock was disqualified by NASCAR due to an illegal carburetor. Apparently he had too much solder on the carburetor screws, and NASCAR felt that was just too much, and many people at the time felt this penalty was more to do with Flock's support of a drivers' union at the time. Curtis Turner also was banned with his unionization attempts as well, and that was a lifetime banishment handed down by Big Bill France. Tim Flock continued to race, however, in non-NASCAR events and non-NASCAR series, including USAC, not the success that he had in NASCAR. Flock was employed by the Ford Motor Company at the time to entertain customers at the track events, where factory support back in those days was big. Flock was reinstated by NASCAR in 1966, and a month before his death, Tim Flock was honored as one of NASCAR's 50 greatest drivers, and that was in 1998. Flock has been inducted into numerous halls of fame, the International Motorsports Hall of Fame in 1991, the Motorsports Hall of Fame of America in 1999, the National Motorsports Press Association Hall of Fame in 1972, the State of Georgia Hall of Fame also in 72, and many other halls of fame, including the NASCAR Hall of Fame in 2014. Tim Flock, one of the early pioneers of our sport. And back in those days, as you can see some of the pictures, they were basically stock cars taken out of a showroom. They still had window glass, they still had headlights, which they had to tape up, stock tires. Yes, they had tubes in them and some reinforced wheels, but those are the cars that they drove in those days. And there was an old adage that went on in the 50s and the 60s, and it was, if you win Sunday, you sell on Monday. And the manufacturers were heavily involved in motor racing throughout the 50s and the 60s. So Tim Flock, one of the pioneers. Speaking of pioneers, Mike Stefanik. Mike Stefanik, born in 1958 in Wilbraham, Mass., competed primarily in the NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour, but also competed in the Xfinity Series, which was then known as the Busch Grand National Series, and the Camping World Truck Series, which then was known as the Craftsman Truck Series, and he also competed in the Busch North, which is now the K&N Pro Series North. 7-time modified champion, named the second greatest NASCAR modified driver of all time in 2003. He's a 2-time champion in the Busch North Series, which is now, like I said, the K&N Pro Series East. 9 total touring championships tie him with legendary modified racer Richie Evans, who tragically lost his life in 1985. And that's the most in NASCAR history. In the Cup Series, you have Dale Earnhardt Sr., Richard Petty, and Jimmy Johnson. 7-time champions. Mike Stefanik is a 9-time champion in the touring series. And the initial picture that we showed, Mike was at his last championship, and he had the 9 rings on his finger to show everybody for that picture. Mike's first full season on the Mod Tour was in 1987. His first championship came in 1989, where he won 7 of 26 races. He was a top competitor throughout the 90s, winning back-to-back championships in the modified in 97 and 98, while simultaneously running the Busch North, winning the championship in that series in the same years. 2 series, 2 championships, 2 years in a row. That's incredible. From 2003 to 2005, Stefanik kind of got away from the K&N Pro Series East and went strictly modified racing. And Mike Stefanik is one of those guys, and he earned over $100,000 in those 2 seasons from NASCAR. Mike Stefanik, in that picture there, driving the 22 car. He had much success. Stefanik appeared on the Jay Leno show via a taped clip in 2013. The clip was from the Battle at the Beach in Daytona, where he was leading the race, and on the final lap, Stefanik was dumped by Stephen Park. I was an official in that race, and it looked like it was just hard racing to me, but Mike Stefanik was very upset by that, and interviewed by Speed Channel's reporter, stating that this is, that he was bleep bleep pissed, and that this was just bull blank. And that video went viral. And now, I've been on both sides of the fence. You don't stick a microphone in somebody's face that just lost one of the biggest races of his life on the last lap, being dumped, and in his opinion, being dumped unnecessarily. But that video went viral, and it was on the Jay Leno show. I think it was the next night that they had that on there, and he was quite upset. He was quite upset about that. But anyway, and going to some of the good stuff, he was the Rookie of the Year in the Craftsman Truck Series in 1999. He was nominated for NASCAR's Hall of Fame in 2015 and 2016. He was the most popular driver in the Modified Series 4 times, in 95, 97, 98, and in 04. And he was a Busch North Series most popular driver in 2003. In the Xfinity Series, where he competed also, was 26 events, although no victories. And the Camping World Truck Series, when it was the Craftsman Truck Series, he also competed in 26 events in that series, also with no wins. However, in the K&N Pro Series each, which was the Busch North back then, he had 12 wins in 164 starts. And in the Modified Series, he had 74 wins in 453 starts. Stefanik got his racing itch watching his brother Bobby, who I believe was 17 years older than him. Bobby raced at the Massachusetts old Riverside Park Speedway. And Bobby was a good top runner there, and Mike just got the bug. He wanted to do it. So he started racing in a limited sportsman car at the Stafford Motor Speedway in 1976. He then moved into a pro stock at the Riverside Park Speedway. His big break came when Richie Evans contacted him, asking him to drive one of the Evans cars at the Thompson Motorsports Park, which was Thompson Speedway back then. Mike's been married to Julie Stefanik since 1984. Julie is his spotter and does a pretty good job of what she does. You never see them not together at an event. In his career, he's won over $2 million, and that's 32 years of racing in the top series, everything but Cup. He did the Xfinity, the Truck Series, K&N Pro Series, Modifieds. Over $2 million earned in his lifetime racing. Mike Stefanik, after he stopped racing, he went to work in the family-owned lumber yard and gravel business, and he now gets his speed rush and his hobby of flying in airplanes. I had the opportunity to be an official under Mike Stefanik, or while Mike Stefanik was racing. I spent a lot of time talking with Mike Stefanik about the old days. He's one of those guys this is what we did on the weekends. He was all for it, and he sacrificed whatever he could do to go racing. And one of those things that he did is he made it happen very quietly on the racetrack. Wasn't bumping and grinding, he wasn't shoving and pushing, it was consistency. And every week he was one of the guys that you were gonna beat. And I could tell a story about my dealings with Mike Stefanik. I believe it was at the Stafford Motor Speedway in Connecticut, and we used to do scuff sessions sometimes, depending on the weather, who raced before the modifieds. And we lined up, and for some reason there was a miscommunication with Mike Stefanik and his crew and what we were doing. And Mike thought it was a scuff session. So Mike was the first car on line, and he goes out and he's just going easy. The green flag went, and he's still going easy. He was confused. He didn't know what was going on. He ended up running the last lap, 3/4 of the last lap at speed, and that was, I got to tell you, other than that battle at the beach where he was upset, that was only the second time that I saw Mike upset at the racetrack, where he was visibly upset and angry. But other than that, Mike Stefanik was a top shelf guy, and racing misses guys like Mike Stefanik. Modified Tour could use him. The younger guys could look up to a man like Mike. So I wish him well in his endeavors moving forward in the family business. Mike Stefanik, 9-time NASCAR champion in between Modifieds and K&N Pro Series. Oh yeah, Mike Stefanik. Speaking of the NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour, the schedule is out for the NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour. The schedule came out, and when you look at the schedule, it's not a lot of races. It's not a lot of new venues. When we look at the 2018 NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour schedule, they have 16 events, 9 different racetracks. Their season opener will be at the South Carolina's Myrtle Beach Speedway on March 17th. They'll be at the Thompson Motorsports Park in Connecticut. They have 4 events scheduled there. The Stafford Motor Speedway, they have 3 events scheduled there. The Seekonk Speedway in Massachusetts, 1 event. Langley Speedway in Virginia, 1 event. Riverhead Raceway on Long Island, 2 events. New Hampshire Motor Speedway, 2 points races and 1 special event race, which will be held in the spring race on a Friday. But the September race at New Hampshire Motor Speedway will be a 250 lap event where I believe the last I saw was $25,000 to win, and they are the headliners for that weekend. It used to be in conjunction with a cup race. The cup race was lost from New Hampshire and will be in Vegas. They'll be at the Bristol Motor Speedway in Tennessee for 1 event, and Oswego Speedway in upstate New York for 1 event as well. NBC Sport Network coverage will be announced at a later date. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we will be talking about the Turkey Derby, some of the results there, and some of the things that went on when we come back.
Hey, I was going to say what's up for some reason. Hey, we're Set It Up, and you're watching the Inravio TV network.
Village Music Shop of Mastic. 1-800-HEY-DUDE. Your full-service store with personalized attention, school band instrument rentals and sales, music instruction on all instruments for all styles and age groups, for guitars, drums, amplifiers, PA systems, and accessories. It's Village Music Shop, 1495 Montauk Highway in Mastic. Call 1-800-HEY-DUDE or go to villagemusicshop.com.
Hi there, this is Buddy from Less Than Jake, and you are listening to Inravio TV. You're probably watching it too.
Welcome back. The Turkey Derby, the annual Turkey Derby, held at the Wall Speedway down in the Jersey Shore, is one of those events I've only been to in my lifetime, and I'm ashamed to say this once. All those years prior to that, I was a young guy working, and I worked weekends. I worked Thanksgiving weekend, and I was 25 years at UPS, and our peak season start that week, so we worked that weekend. You know, go home on Thursday, have some turkey dinner, and go back and make sure the packages get out. But I had all intentions of going this year, but as everyone knows, I'm still healing from that August surgery, so it wasn't a good idea for me to go walking around the racetrack for 3 days. But anyway, Jimmy Blewett, he tore that place up. Jimmy Blewett is raced modifieds on dirt, modifieds on asphalt, the modified tour. What we call Wall Stadium Speedway his home, but It was a Friday, Saturday, Sunday deal. And on Friday, they had the Sportsman's Limited late models, factory stocks, and the four-cylinder stocks. The Sportsman race was won by Jarrett Giantomaso. The limited late model was won by Jimmy Blewett. The factory stocks by Elliott Wall, and the four-cylinder stocks by Brian Osborne. We come back Saturday for 3 main events. The Tour Top Modifieds with Jimmy Blewett taking the win there. There's his car in Victory Lane. The Dirt Mods was Andrew Krause, and the INEX Legends was Mike Alicaro. Sunday brought more action back to the Jersey Shore with the INEX Legends of victory taken by Long Island's Richie Davidovich, the factory stocks by Richie Byron, the four-cylinder stocks by Brian Osborne. We had Scott Hummel in the Dirt Sportsman. The Dirt Outlaws was Brian Ludwig, the four-cylinder Demo Derby by Devin Smith, and the big car Demo Derby also won by Devin Smith. Now, when you look at a guy like Jimmy Blewett has been racing cars most of his life. Jimmy Blewett, the son of John Blewett Jr. and the grandson of John Blewett Sr. and the brother of the late John Blewett III. Watching those two race together, John Boy and Jimmy, when they ran modifieds on the tour, just watching them race together, you knew when they were side by side, they were laughing. You knew it. It's, I know if my brother was racing with me, I'd want to bump and grind and have bragging rights until the next race. And that's what they did. They had separate operations, yet they were always there for each other. And I know Jimmy on a personal note, and I've had some fun with Jimmy, and we've laughed and together, we've cried together, but we had some good times. And Jimmy's just amazing. I can remember when he came to Long Island to drive for Eddie Partridge, and I was like, why is this guy coming here? I was one of the officials back then, and I was like, why is he coming here? And and Eddie Partridge always had this way of bringing somebody from somewhere else to drive his stuff. He had Bo Gunnan driving for him for a little while, Bo coming out of the New England area, and then Jimmy Blewett. And I'll tell you what, Jimmy put a show on, thus earning the nickname Showtime. Jimmy Showtime Blewett. And not only does he go out there to beat you, he goes out there to beat you in a way that you look and say, wow, Teddy Christopher races that way. He'd be sent to the back, he'd work his way up through the field, he'd push you, he'd shove you, he'd rub you. You knew Jimmy was there. And a lot of people didn't like his style, but you know what? His style comes from a day long gone, where that's what racing was all about. Today's racing, something, you touch a guy and they want to have words with you after. I've even heard on the scanner at some racetracks, just when I go, I sometimes bring my radio and I listen, and I watch the guy, they're going, two cars together, going down the straightaway, and the other guy braked, the second guy in the line braked later than the first guy, and he banged him. He hit him square. He didn't send him. He didn't dump him, spin him, get him loose. And the word out of the tower was that race receivers, they could talk to the drivers. And he says, one more thing like that, you're out of the race. Wow. You can't touch anymore. It's similar to what's going on in our country today, where everything, you got to be politically correct and you got to be good. And that's racing. There's nothing wrong with good, hard racing. Yeah, if you're going down a straightaway, going up to the corner, and you left turn somebody into their right corner, and you send them into the fence, driver's side first. All right, that's not racing. That's just being stupid. But good, there's nothing wrong with good, hard racing, and that's what's missing today. And that's why a lot of the fans are backing away from our sport. That's why some of the fans don't go. Darlington, there's a lot of people today that they've heard about the Darlington stripe, but when they watch the race, they're looking for the stripe somewhere on the wall, on the racetrack. No, the Darlington stripe was when you came off the corners, you rubbed against the wall, and by mid-race at Darlington, you couldn't see the numbers. you had the Darlington stripe. Young people today don't understand that kind of racing, the good hard racing. Now the cars have to be pristine and pretty, and they don't even want to see wheel marks on these things anymore. And, the donuts, as we used to call them. You don't want to see donuts on the door. You're running them too close. Whoa, that's racing. That's racing to me. And Jimmy Blewett is one of those guys that he races hard, and he races you fair. And on any race, if you're racing with Jimmy Blewett and you beat him, you beat him. He didn't let you win. He didn't back off. I've seen him take cars that weren't handling and go win races. I've seen him drive cars that were underpowered and he'd go out and win. So he's a racer. He's a true racer, and I congratulate Jimmy on his victories this weekend at the Turkey Derby. I've seen Jimmy race dirt down in Norwegia. I've seen him race the TQs in Atlantic City. I've seen him race the modifieds at that wall, and I've seen him race modifieds on the tour. And I often wondered why Jimmy never ended up in a higher series, why he didn't end up in full-fended stock cars, the K&N or the Xfinity. I wondered why Jimmy Blewett didn't move up the ladder like a Mike Stefanik did in his day, Mike McLaughlin in his day. Why he didn't move up. Jimmy Spencer. They had the same styles almost. Why didn't they move up? And it's not for lack of money, because John Blewett, Scrap, they put a lot of cars out over the years on a lot of racetracks. And I can remember when Jimmy's dad came to ISA Speedway in the 70s, because he had a run-in at his home track at Wall. And, he was a rough and tumble guy. You had to beat him. You had to beat him, and those were the days. That's when racing was fun, and that's when racing was good. And like I said, you see a lot of empty stands, and you see a lot of sponsors disappearing, and we're going to talk about that later on in the show, what's going on with that as well. But when you look at those things, it's just sad that our sport has become cookie cutter race cars, and the rules packages are such that it's like a parade sometimes with no music, and the disparity between the top runner and the back marker is so slim that if the front half of the field just lifted for 3 seconds and the back markers kept going, the whole field would be inverted. That's how close the racing is today. And when you have these off-season races like the Turkey Derby, the North-South Shootout, I saw in the social media somebody was talking about, why don't we have races like that in the South? Well, I thought that's what the North-South Shootout was all about. It's not done during the regular season when the modifieds are, all their different tours have their events. It's done after that happens, the Turkey Derby in November. You don't want to start racing in December or in January. You just don't. It's too cold, and it's just, people trying to get there from the Northeast, just trying to get out of the Northeast. Sometimes with the weather, it's just not conducive to December, January racing. Yeah, we can go down to New Smyrna in February for a part of Speedway and make it happen there. But there needs to be a break. And why does that need to be? You need to have a break because you need to build new cars. You need to have your motors freshened up. Yeah, some of the big teams have a fleet of cars and a shelf full of motors and all kinds of rear ends and trannies. Yeah, they could do it. But the average driver who competes in a modified touring series does not have all of that. They may have some cars and they may have some equipment, but they don't have enough to race 10 months out of the year and go to these special events. And I know some tour guys that I've spoken to, the NASCAR modified tour guys, and I say, hey, why don't you go to this event? Why do you go to that? How come you don't race it? And they said that they only race the NASCAR modified tour. They don't even race tour type mods at a home track or come to Long Island and do that. And some of them are, they're not kids anymore, and the parade, so to speak, passed them by, and they're not looking to move up the ladder and become, Xfinity drivers or Camping World Truck Series drivers, or even a Cup driver. They're not looking for that when you're 40, 45, 50, even 60. There's some guys that are still racing at that age. But when you look at the modified series, even the K&N Pro Series, East and West, it's young drivers, young talent that's coming out of, some of them from the diversity program, as did Darrell Bubba Wallace. He came out of the diversity program. K&A, Trucks, Xfinity, now Cup. They've come out of that. They didn't really come out of the bull rings of their local racetracks like a lot of the drivers did years ago. And even you look at the top series in NASCAR, the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series, when you look at that, you look at 48, 49, the 50s, 60s, if you had a car and it passed tech, you weren't racing. You were put out on your own if you couldn't compete. Sometimes the fellow drivers would make sure that you didn't come back, and sometimes you just realized that you couldn't, and sometimes NASCAR would ask you to maybe go bowling. But when you look back on that era, there wasn't a progression up the ranks. They raced at their short tracks, and they found a car, they found some money, and they won Cup racing. And that's the difference between the drivers of yesteryear and the drivers of today. The drivers of today start at 5 years old in go-karts and Bandoleros and INEX legend cars, and they're groomed for this. And and in some cases, daddy has a lot of money or grandpa has a lot of money, and they go racing. And that's one of the differences between today and yesterday. You don't see that. These kids, they wad up a car on Saturday or Sunday, they grab their suit and go home. Next week they show up and their car's all put back together. I mean, that's the extreme. I'm sure they're at the shop at least watching, but I don't think they could rebuild some of these cars. You don't see that anymore. Those days are gone. Anyway, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we have some news, some NASCAR news. We're going to have a little discussion about concussions in racing, and we'll talk about what's going on around the top series when we come back.
Hi, I'm Remington.
I'm Emerson. And I'm Sebastian.
We're Palais Royale, and you're watching Inravio TV.
There we go.
The world of advertising has changed. Radio, TV, and newspaper revenues have declined drastically. Why? Because businesses have realized that advertising return on investment isn't what it used to be. So what can we do about it? Well, that's easy. Advertise online. Own a local restaurant, real estate agency, or even a national retail chain? Whatever your business, Inravio can get your message out there, and we can do it at a fraction of the cost. Call today and see the difference for yourself. This isn't TV. This isn't radio. This is Inravio.com.
Hey, this is Chris Jake, and if Inravio.com spots you at an event wearing this bracelet, they will give you $100.
Village Music Shop of Mastic. 1-800-HEY-DUDE. Your full-service store with personalized attention, school band instrument rentals and sales, music instruction on all instruments for all styles and age groups, for guitars, drums, amplifiers, PA systems, and accessories. It's Village Music Shop. 1495 Montauk Highway in Mastic. Call 1-800-HEY-DUDE or go to villagemusicshop.com.
Hi, this is Mike Jarecki from My Race News, and you're watching the Inravio TV network.
Welcome back, everybody. NASCAR news. JTG Dougherty bought the charter from Furniture Row's number 77 team for its 37 car. Furniture Row was leasing that charter, and according to the rules, you could only lease a charter for 1 year. the Penske's 12, the Wood Brothers 21, and the TriStar Motorsports are teams that need a charter for 2018, and teams that have extra charters for 2018 include Roush Fenway Racing, Richard Petty Motorsports, who's getting one of their charters back, and that was for the 44 car, and Front Row Motorsports. Now, the charter, for those who forgot, allows you to be automatically in the top 36 cars, automatically in the event. Automatic. No matter what happens, you're in. 40 cars start the event, so 4 teams are vying for the last spot. And I don't know if that's working, because sometimes they don't have full fields. They only have like 38 or 39. You know, yeah, you'll see extra cars trying to get into Daytona because they're hoping for that bump, that big payout. They're hoping for that. But this charter system, I just don't think it's a right thing. Although the team said they wanted it, understanding that when you look at the team owners, you got Hendrick, got Roush Fenway, you have Joe Gibbs. You know, these teams have like 3 and 4 cars. So, yeah, it's to their advantage. They want to be in every show. And it has to do with sponsor issues and some of the sponsor contracts. If you don't make the show, you have to give a percentage back. And I understand that, but I'd rather see 50 cars show up at a Cup event. You start the top 40 in time. Yeah, there's provisionals, past champion, you know, past owners champion and owner points, driver points, and then just a provisional at large if a guy's not in the top, you know, if he's in the top 20 and he didn't make the show, he's in. So I think this is something that's going to be taken a look at down the road, this charter system. Anyway, NASCAR. NASCAR's losing sponsors left and right, not only for teams, but also for their contingency programs as well. Big names like AARP, 3M, Dollar General, Quicken Loans, and Target prior to or during the 2017 season. Nature's Bakery. These companies came in, didn't feel it was worth the millions that they were spending. You know, we have other corporations not coming back in 18, and it's reported that Miller Coors may not extend their deal to have Coors Light as the official beer of NASCAR and the sponsorship of the Coors Pole Award. This was reported by Sports Business Daily that Miller Coors has also cut back on its deal with Team Penske. The official beer of NASCAR, Miller Coors, is paying $4 million a year for that right. Budweiser is out with Harvick, and Youngling left Richard Childress Racing after only 1 season. Now, when you think about that, go back 10 years, 15 years, when you looked at a Cup driver. His uniform had 1 logo in the front, 1. Down his leg, his arm, all over his car. Think about Jeff Gordon and DuPont, Richard Petty and STP, Rusty Wallace with Miller, you know, Mark Martin and Valvoline, just to name a couple. Now, it's a bunch of little patches. There's no big number 1, and who's coming in for 5 races, who's in for 6, who's in for 4, who's in for just Talladega and Daytona. That's a problem, folks. And why is it a problem? It's not because the teams aren't doing well. It's because NASCAR and the teams are not promoting their businesses, their corporations. You want to return on that sponsorship dollar. I'm going to give you $1. I don't want to make $1 because if I'm going to break even, why do it? I want to make $2 or $3. And if I'm making $2 or $3, I'm coming back next year. And maybe I'm making 3 or 4. I'm going to sign a long-term deal. And I know through the UPS deal that we had with Robert Yates Racing back in the day, for every $1 that Robert Yates Racing got from UPS, in addition to becoming the express carrier of NASCAR, UPS made $3 and change back for every dollar they got through merchandising, through logo trademarks, through time on TV that they didn't have to pay for as a commercial. And when you look at these things, when you look at what's going on with the NASCAR sponsorship deals, it's a problem. It's a problem that needs to be addressed before the stands are pretty much totally empty and races start getting canceled because the promoters and the track operators can't pay the purse, which they have to send to NASCAR prior to the event, because those prize monies are paid out from NASCAR. Because of back in the day, a lot of promoters would start the race, all the fans are in, let's take the money and run. And that's basically why NASCAR started. Anyway, speaking of NASCAR, Jeff Bodine, the 1986 Daytona 500 winner, is now 65 years old and has suffered in his careers multiple concussions. This was a wreck that you see here on the screen, that when he flipped his truck at Daytona end over end, in parts going into the grandstand. It hurt him for a long time, and still. When asked how many concussions he's had in his career, he just said there's too many to count, and he really never thought about it. Bodine retired 2 years ago to avoid any more risks that he would be putting himself through. He heard about the NFL Players Association was suing the NFL because the NFL did not disclose the dangers of head injuries to football players. Many former NFL players suffer from Alzheimer's disease and other neurological diseases. His question: are former and current NASCAR drivers also at risk and facing the same forms of trauma and diseases? He said some of his friends can't even talk right. They can't even talk right. They're hard to understand. Bobby Allison suffers from memory loss, does not remember the win that he won at Daytona with his son coming in second. Doesn't remember it. Ernie Irvin, severe head trauma, Michigan Speedway. Doesn't talk right. He's not doing well. He looks like he's staring into space. Stephen Park got blasted in Dover while tightening his belts. If you look at Stephen, he's not the same. Anyway, we're going to take a quick break, and we come back, we'll continue this discussion on concussions in racing when we come back.